What is up, guys? So this is interesting. I deep dived and somehow fell upon this article written in 1873. So this article that I should be able to link in the description goes over some people in the past, in the modern era, post-Christianity, that believed in the gods or had reverence for the gods even during times of Christianity. And we know about Plethon and people here and there, but there were people more modern going into the 1800s that believed in the gods and the comments they've made about the gods. So I want to talk about those people because we know about people, especially in the 20th century and the 21st century. It's becoming more modern of a thing. But some of the comments some people made throughout history, like in the 13, 14, 1500s, were interesting. So we're going to take a look at these people, and it talks about where they lived and how long they lived. And some of these people died because of their belief in the gods and the rejection of Christianity. So something really cool. So it's not that long of an article, but let's go ahead and get started. And the first one I want to talk about is Plethon, the philosopher that tried to revive the worship of the great gods. And it says in the article that he was from 1355 to 1452. It says that it was at Florence that we find that the ancient learning brought face to face with the ideas of modern civilization. And here amongst the distinguished scholars whom Cosimo de' Medici gathered around him arose the first Academia Platonica of the revival. This institution founded the purpose of encouraging in the study of Plato. So Plethon was into bringing back the philosophy of Plato. The famous George Plethon was for many years the great luminary. Only a few fragmentary remains of his work have come down to us. And remember, this article was written in 1873, so the book that I did a review of was not just easily available to everyone like it is, luckily, now. It says, this institution founded for the purpose of encouraging the study of Plato, the famous Plethon was for many years the great luminary. Only a few fragmentary remains of his work have come down to us, and we are indebted almost entirely to his enemies for what we know of his opinions. But it is evident that he was one of the enthusiasts, like the Alexandrian elects, dreamed of a universal religion which should harmonize in one philosophical worship the varying religion instincts of all mankind. According to George, he entertained most of Plato's opinions concerning the nature of the gods and the necessity of sacrifice. So it's funny that if you have not seen my review of Plethon, the Sacred Text of Hellenic Polytheism is the name of the video. So that is true, that there was a Christian who, after the death of Plethon, that he tried to burn up all the works. And he just kept the works that would criminalize Plethon to prove that he was a heretic pagan. And so he kept all the religious stuff, and he pulled out, this monk, this Christian, pulled out all the fluff that would not be an accusation to Plethon and burned it, so we don't have that anymore. But what he did leave is the teachings and about the worship of the gods. So that's what it was referring to, that the Christians helped edit the book, basically. It's kind of funny, and that's what they mean by he did a favor. So this is what Plethon said. Quote, I have heard him myself, when we were together at Florence, say that in a few years all men would embrace with one consent a single and simple religion. And when I asked him if it would be the religion of Jesus Christ or Muhammad, he answered, neither nor the other, but a third which will not greatly differ from paganism. So that was Plethon's answer to the religion that's going to be the world religion, is that it won't be Christianity, it won't be Islam, it's going to be closer to paganism. And it says the principal work of Plethon was on laws, was a work that he did, and it was burnt after his death by Scholarius, the patriarch of Constantinople. who reports that it taught a plurality of gods, some eternal and others of late development, under the presidency of a supreme being whom he called Zeus. And in my review, and if you know that the works of Platon, he said the first cause, the being that created everything, was Zeus. Zeus was at the beginning. At the beginning, there was God, as the Bible says, and in Platon's philosophy, that God was Zeus, and he created everything. So Marsilio Ficino and Luigi Pulci are the two that I'm going to talk about next in this article. So Marsilio lived from 1433 to 1499, and Luigi lived from 1432 to 1484. So it says that Ficinus, the principal of Cosimo's academy, was a worthy successor to Platon. He is said to have cherished an almost adulterous veneration for Plato, whose bust he kept in his chamber with a lamp burning constantly before it. In his writings, we find the strange mixture of things, pagan and Christian, which is so characteristic of the period of the Renaissance. Although a priest and holding valuable preferment, he proposed the preacher should expound the Parmenides and the Philebus of Plato, alternatively with the epistles and the Apocrypha in the churches. It is the opinion of some of the best Italian critics that Ficinus assisted Pulci in the theological and metaphysical part of that very remarkable poem, the Morgante, and the bold arguments against Christianity which are put into the mouth of the fiend Astaroth are especially his. Pulci's conception of the deity is essentially pantheistic, and in more than one place he ventures to predict the approaching extinction of the Christian religion. The publication of the book and the escape of Ficinus from any active persecution are striking instances of the freedom of that which existed in Italy during the 15th century. And this is the 15th century we're talking about. It's interesting that people were brave enough to try to follow their own spiritual path and talk about the gods and all this stuff in the 15th century. And Hume Dayla Falls, that was in 1603. So we're moving up into the modern era and the people that believed in the gods. So it says that in the time of Louis XII, a young scholar of Abbeville named Hume Dayla Falls became so enamored of the Olympian deities that he conceived the greatest hatred to Christianity. On the 25th of August in 1603, being at high mass in the cathedral of his native town, he silently snatched the host from the hands of the officiating priest and dashed it to the ground, exclaiming, "What, always this folly?" So you can tell that nothing good's going to come of that. So what happened? It says that the unfortunate Hume was immediately cast into prison, but no persuasion or threats could induce him to abjure his opinions. So he was so in love with the gods that he literally went and blasphemed in the church and just thrown into prison for it, and no amount of pressure or torture or anything could change his opinion. He maintained before the priests who were sent to convert him that Jupiter was the sovereign lord of the universe. In 1603, language like this could be but one insult. He was burnt alive in the marketplace of Abbeville after having both his hands cut off and his tongue bored through with a hot iron. His last words were, "I am very angry, and this is what I can do about it." Nor was this the case of a solitary one. We are expressly told that many of the Spanish students held similar opinions and quitted Abbeville to avoid the fate of their companion. So he started a mini movement, but once the leader was literally burned at the stake, it kind of scattered the group. So the next is Voltaire. I'm sure you've heard of him. So Voltaire lived from 1694 to 1778, and I like his quote. It says that it was reported that when Voltaire first visited the ruins of the Colosseum, he was observed to make a profound gesture before the great head of Jupiter, and being questioned as to the reason for this strange act of devotion by the scandalized ecclesiastics who accompanied him, it is said that he replied, I love this, Voltaire said, "I pay my court to him now in the day of his adversity, in the hope that he will remember me when his turn comes around again." That's funny. I like that. Worshipping Jupiter or Zeus now. That way, when he is the main focus of spirituality, he remembers Voltaire. So David Hume in 1711 to 1776. David Hume, tells us in one of his essays that the Olympian system was too supremely beautiful and too well adapted for the needs of man to have ever finally perished, and gives his opinion that even in the degenerate days it must still prevail in some part of the world. So David Hume believed that Hellenic Polytheism, that the belief in the gods of Olympus, was so beautiful that somewhere, even though it's not a mainstream spiritual path, that it has to exist somewhere in the world. That's an awesome quote. John Franscham, 1730 to 1810. He's a big one, so let's hear what it says about him. Because his nickname was the English pagan in the 17 and 1800s. Another English pagan of the last century was John Franscham, a poor scholar of Norwich who had arrived at many of at Thomas Taylor's conclusions, and I think it talks about Thomas Taylor later, while the latter was yet a child. In 1769, he wrote, but did not publish, a work called The Ostrom of Orpheus, in which he openly avowed his belief in the plurality of gods. Bell had said at the consistent Spinozist, who carries out his principle to their logical conclusion must infallibly end in polytheism, and Franscham held himself to have proved the truth of this proposition. With Spinoza, he held that the first cause is uncreated and indestructible, but not intelligent. So again, the Big Bang was not, in his opinion, an intelligent being. So Platon said it was Zeus. And then this guy I'm talking about, John Franscham, said that the Big Bang was just that, the Big Bang that was not an intelligent being, in his opinion. And is no other, indeed, than the entire eternal and infinite mass of matter composing of the universe. So he believes it was more like the Big Bang was the creation of the universe. But he refused to believe that this chaos was shaped and animated by a single co-eternal mind. But on the contrary, he held that nature, through 1,000 voices, proclaimed the existence of innumerable intelligent powers of forces, plastic and designing, who ruled all this sublunary affairs and may most fitly be designed by the nomenclature of the Hellenic theology. And he wrote a collection of hymns addressed to Jupiter, Minerva, Venus, and Hercules. So John Franscham, believed that it was the Big Bang Theory that started the universe, the Big Bang. But he said that after the Big Bang that created the universe, the gods appeared, and they are conscious intelligence that is molding the universe and behind the universe. So Johan Wolfgang von Goth, from 1749 to 1838, written about him, it says, in recent times the pagan spirit has been greatly diffused. In Germany, for a century past, it has many years in a growing tendency to accept the beautiful creation of the Hellenic cult as a graceful symbolism of the conclusion of modern science. The philosophical side of the revival we find in Heine and Schelling, the aesthetic in Wieland and Friedrich Schlegel, and above all in Goth, who of all moderns was perhaps the most thoroughly pagan. The most singular reports used to circulate throughout Europe about Goth's heathenism. So he wrote, it is not surprising that we find that the bust of Jupiter placed before his bed and turned towards the rising sun, towards the rising sun in order that he may address his morning prayers to him on waking. Pretty cool that he would have a bust of Jupiter, and he would wake up and it'd be right there so he could do his morning prayers. All right, and the last one that we're going to talk about is John Sterling, who lived from 1806 to 1844. And then you got Percy Shelley from 1792 to 1822. And then Bertel Thorvaldsen, that lived from 1770 to 1844. It says that in England, traces of the same feeling are to be found in Shelley, and more recently in Sterling, who looked with loving and longing eyes upon the poetical world of Olympus. In a letter printed in Life by the Archdeacon Hare, he expressed his beliefs that a time will come when, penance having ceased to seeking either true history or false religion in that beautiful creation, it will become known to all the earth, even to the now gross and suffering multitudes, as an exonerable treasure house of noble joys. He relates also with the great zest the story of Thorwaldsen, who one day dining with Bunsen at Rome, becoming wearied of the theological conversations of his host, threw open the window which commanded a noble prospect of the city over which the planet Jupiter was shining with great splendor, and filled his glass to the honor of the ancient gods. So an interesting article, so I just wanted to share that with you guys. Again, that article was written in 1873, and what it does, it shows that throughout history, when it was just Islam and Christianity and Buddhism and Hinduism even ruling the world, there were still people that felt their heart drawn to the gods, and that was the purpose of me making this video. This article was written more to look at the crazy people that still believe that, but it's a testimony that the love of the gods truly has survived the centuries, and that people have fallen in love with the gods, and so much so that they died literally for the gods. Anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this pretty lengthy video, but I thought it was worth sharing, and I will talk to you later. Bye.